Welcome to Syntax. Today we're talking about how to make your app feel faster than it actually is. So we're talking UI improvements, little tips and tricks that you can do to make your app feel faster. We've talked about how to actually make your website faster. We've talked about that quite a bit, but perceived speed is actually really important when you're talking about UI and talking about performance. So we're going to go through a whole list of things you can do to improve the perceived speed of your website. Welcome, Scott. What's up?
Hey, I got to say, if your website feels faster, doesn't that mean it's actually faster? Because that's what I mean. We can measure numbers and whatever that it took this amount of time to load.
Yeah.
But isn't it all about how it feels? I think it's all about how it feels. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, if it is faster, it feels faster. But if it's the same speed, but it feels faster,
it's faster.
It's faster.
They're both, to me, these are both two sides of the same coin, and I think they're both valuable techniques to have in your tool belt. You know what else is a valuable tool in your tool belt is Sentry, because Sentry does more than just tell you if your application is broken. It also tells you if your application is slow or if it feels slow, because you get all kinds of insights in terms of being able to see just how fast your app is at any given point. You can assess the user misery score for how fast or slow this thing is for the majority of users. And it gives you a nice little user misery bar to say, hey, these are the pages on your site that are slow and potentially have a lot of traffic. So this is what you should be looking at. And then you can further dive into, all right, well, what exactly is taking so long to load on these pages? What are the things? What are the aspects? Where do I even start? Are there errors? Right? You can connect all of those dots together and really understand the visibility. Who's getting a bad experience, why, and fix it, because that's ultimately what we're about here. So check it out at sentry.io/syntax. Sign up using the coupon code TASTYTREAT, all lowercase, all one word, and get 2 months for free. This podcast is presented by Sentry.
Let's get into it.
First
one we have here is using a Mousedown, or probably should be using a pointerdown event versus a click. Now, this is not always a good idea.
Not blanket advice, yeah.
Certainly got a lot of people angry on Twitter about it. But the trick here is that you can fire things off when somebody mouses down or touches the screen versus when they let go. A click is registered when you let go. A touch is registered when you let go. So if you listen for the initial start or down, you can make things feel much faster. So Adam Wathan of Tailwind tweeted the other day that he couldn't figure out why his select dropdowns just felt slower than all the other UI libraries out there. And it turns out they were the only one listening for click. The rest of them were listening for pointer down events or mouse down or touch start events. So that's very important. That can make it feel much faster because you fire off whatever it is you want right away. It can also be really bad UX as well, because often I find myself, if it's like a button where you want to navigate somewhere, I'll find myself touching it, and then if you drag your finger off, or if you accidentally touch something just with your finger, that shouldn't necessarily always register an actual action, right?
Totally.
There's this weird thing with iOS. Apparently, iOS still has a 40 millisecond delay in firing off a click event. For the longest time, we use this thing called fast click, where if you wanted to, like, for example, like checkboxes, right? If you want to tap like 3 checkboxes, you just want to go boom, boom, boom. Like you're really quick at that. And often if there's a delay in registering that click or that touch event, then you might hit it twice because you think it didn't actually do it. And that's very frustrating UX. So certainly with all the caveats, be very careful with this one, but it is used by lots of websites out there you might not even realize.
Yeah, I think this all goes back to the idea of when you touch something, when you click it, the the website should respond instantly or as fast as possible to anything that you're doing in an interaction. And there's several different types of issues that could be at play for why that might feel slow, some of which we'll talk even more about later on in this episode. But just that, like, when you click something, the website should respond. And if you click something and have to wait a second before the page does something or whatever, that makes normal users feel like the thing is broken. Like, I clicked it, what's happening? It's also one of those things that makes the website feel like it's worse than a native app. Many of the things that we're trying to like approach with like native apps is that they're considered to be faster, smoother, whatever. Not just because of 60 frames per second, but because almost always when you tap something, something happens, right? And so that's a big part of it. Another one here is that animations should be fast. And it's not like every animation. There's certainly some animations that can be slower or more lethargic for specific aesthetic reasons, but we're talking UI animations. And for the longest time, I defaulted to 0.3 seconds for all of my transitions and animations.
Way too long.
Since moved that to 0.2. Yes, I have since I was like, you know what? Whatever it is, dial it back one more, because a lot of people, they fall in love with the fact that the thing is animating and they want to see that animation, right? They're like, ooh, yeah, that's a great... Users don't have time for that. And for the most part, you want your animations to be speedy. Definitely something that you don't want to take a second, half a second, any of that stuff,
No.
0.2 of a second, probably fine. Yeah.
You think about it, if you want to do several things very fast, whether it's, let's say you want to open up 3 boxes and each of those takes an animation, right? 300 milliseconds to click. So that means you're clicking 3 boxes. It takes you a full second to click 3 boxes. Whereas like you could probably tap or click those in, I don't know how long, but not a second. You could do it much faster. So just start with like 0.1, 0.2. It depends, obviously, what your animation is. If you're sliding an entire thing, that's probably much can be longer. But these like micro animations, they should be very, very fast, or even like entirely taken off. Like if you look at a lot of the stuff on OS X or Mac OS, when you are moving around, switching windows, there's no animation at all. It simply just happens.
Yeah, you click the Finder
nice
icon, Finder pops up. And I think that is a big thing, is that animations certainly are great for a number of things, but not everything. I do like, one of my big pet peeves is like when you have a hamburger menu and you click it and it's like, okay, we get it. I just want the menu to open, and like give me a 0.2 or 1/10 second animation on that thing and call it a day. I don't have time to sit here and wait for your hamburger menu to open.
Yeah, on that same point, animation should be like cancelable. The one that drives me crazy is Spotify. If you want to view our stats on the Spotify podcasters, you open up the date input and you click on the back arrow to go back a month. And first of all, you should be able to select custom ranges. But if I want to select 3 years worth of dates, I got to hit the back arrow 36 times to go back for 3 days or for 3 years. And what happens is I have to click the arrow and I have to wait until the animation finishes and then click it again, because if I click it too quickly, it either breaks the entire thing, I have to reload the page, or it just doesn't react to the click as well. So if there is an animation in flight and somebody hits that thing again, especially like you open something and you go, oh, I didn't mean to do that, and you quickly hit the close button, that should react to the action immediately. I also have this on Instagram all the time, where you ever accidentally open an ad on like an Instagram story?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I do? I quit the app. I'm just like, I'm sick of this. Done. You know, it's such a flow breaker. I could watch an hour's worth of stories, and I accidentally touch an ad, and it just opens like that in-browser web thing, and you can't click X fast enough because the X is in the top left-hand corner. You know why? I can't reach it with my thumb. I'm too lazy. I just I quit the entire app. Screw
done.
it. And I hope that their stats show that I'm doing that.
And sadly, I think you're probably the exception there, because I agree. I'm the same way. I hate that stuff. And one thing about animations being cancelable and reversible, another tip with this too, is that it should be, the visual aspect of it should be reversible. Too often times what people do with this kind of stuff is they have an opening animation and a closing animation. The opening goes from 0 to 100, the closing goes from 100 to 0. So if you cancel it, it's going to jump up to 100 and then go to 0, rather than, if you click cancel at 50%, it should stop at 50% and go back to 0. Like, it should not start at the end point of the animation. It should start where you are.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, and just reverse itself out from there.
Yeah. Skirt. Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about an optimistic UI. Optimistic UI is one of these things that can do what we said just a moment ago and make your application respond the moment that you touch something. So too often times what we're doing is you click a button to perform an action, it goes off and does some kind of fetch or does some kind of data call, it hits the API, it hits the server or something. That thing takes who knows how long, could take a little bit of time, a lot of bit of time.
Even like 400 milliseconds, like you add something to a list and it needs to refresh the list. You're sitting there being like, did it work?
Did it work? And so the right answer isn't to put a loading screen here or anything like that. The right answer is to perform the update to the UI the moment that you click something. Like the moment I hit enter, perform the update to the UI, and then send that information to the server in the background. And then once that information comes back, what you're doing is you're either responding to an error state and saying, oops, like something failed and remove the one from the list or whatever, or you're just now in the current state that you're in. Like if you're using an each loop with some IDs and you update that data in any of the modern frameworks, it's not going to re-render that thing. So what you'll want to do is, like, let's say I'm adding something to a to-do list. I hit enter. The framework, even before it kicks off that API call, should be adding that text to the list of data. That way it pops in immediately. And then this is called optimistic UI. A number of like frameworks have this kind of thing built in. So if you're looking to see if your data fetching loading framework has it in, it's going to be called optimistic UI. But this is one of those things that can make such a big impact in having your app feel more native.
Yeah. And even one step further than optimistic UI, and I know you'll like this one, is don't have an optimistic UI and just save the data locally and use a sync engine. Yeah.
Yes.
Like the whole idea behind local first is that you just store the data locally. There's no need to wait around, right? You get rid of loading states, you get rid of optimistic states. It simply just immediately updates, and then the sync engine will update it in the background.
Yeah, and so optimistic UI is kind of like local data light, where you are handling just that data change, right? And you're but with local data, you're essentially caching that data on device in a database. So therefore, even on page refresh, it's going to be instantaneous or as fast as it possibly can be. And then again, on that change, it's instantaneous or as fast as it can be. And then everything else happens in the background. It's just wonderful.
Delay loading indicators if something happens quickly. So we often will show like a spinner when something is being worked on, but in a lot of cases, it's so fast that it actually doesn't make sense to show a loading indicator that something is happening, because it's just like a split second where you're showing that like a quarter of a spinner, and that is kind of like a weird janky UI, right? So what you can do if you are showing a loader or using like a React suspense or something like that, throw a minimum display value on that. And if it does not need to show, like basically you would render out your loader, but in the first 100 millisecond life of that component, show nothing. Because in an ideal circumstance, you would go from your submission state to your finished state, and you don't have to show a loader there because it's so quickly. Same with like changing pages as well. When you change from one page to another, it often makes sense to show like a loading bar on the top. Like I had this with my own website. I developed the whole thing locally. I click on the page, it's nice and fast. I have caching in production, it's nice and fast. But there are some cases where maybe there's no cache hit, or maybe somebody's on a really slow connection, where you click on something and nothing happens, and you have to provide some sort of like loading indicator that the page has changed from one to another, because you can't make the little browser things spin. You can't, normally when you go from a regular HTML page to another HTML page, you can make the browser spin. But when you're using a single page app and you're using push state, you're not actually reloading the page. So you have to show the user that something is happening. So I'm telling you, both show the user that something is happening, but don't show them too quickly, because if it is a very fast application, maybe you don't even need to show them. The way they know that it worked is that it literally worked.
Yes, right, totally, exactly. Another good tip here is preload-on-hover. So you can have an event to listen for on-hover, then fire off your API call, whatever that may be. Many frameworks that like take over data loading do this for you. Even like SvelteKit is like one of the default behavior for links is that when you hover over a link, it's preloading that route. But like Gatsby was one of the first ones to make this a core part of the experience. And one of the things that people really felt when they used a Gatsby site, like even in alpha, when Gatsby was in alpha, back when I was a user, because once something goes out of alpha, I'm over it. That's how I work. But so in Gatsby, you'd use a Gatsby site, you'd click something, and it would just feel like the fastest darn loading experience on the planet. And part of that was preload-on-hover being part of the experience out of the box.
Yeah, that also comes with some downsides. Like you could be unnecessarily loading pages, which could be expensive for your server bill. It could be expensive for your extra users. But in a lot of cases, it's well worth it, especially if you have good caching and your payloads are not very large. Like let's say you're going from your contact page to your about page. The like overhead of preloading that is almost nothing. And some people, I asked on Twitter, like for some of these tips, some people said calculate the mouse trajectory and preload that. So don't do it on hover. Do it when you think they're about to hover on it. And I don't know of any libraries that do this. So if you put them down below in the comments, if you know this, but based on some trigonometry, you can figure out, they're headed for the about link. Start loading that page,
There was that famous Amazon blog post when they showed how they had like invisible triangles so that when you're moused off of a drop-down menu, they had like
nested drop-down menus. And if you go like in a triangle instead, that was wild at the time.
That was wild at the time. I remember thinking like these are the smartest people on the planet, but maybe you could do something like that, like have a trajectory triangle. I don't even know how you would do that. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense.
Some sort of AI with the mouse movements, pipe your users every mouse move. Eye tracking. You laugh, but like there's literally libraries out there for that.
Well, I use the Vision Pro, and the entire UI is done with eye tracking. So if I want to type in a search bar, I just look at the search bar and start typing. You look over here, and I tap my finger, and it clicks on it. So like you get really used to eye tracking doing things for you when you use that headset, for sure.
One other super annoying thing that I hate on websites, and like this is so clear probably for most of you, but like throwing up a full page spinner on every single change. So like this especially hits when you're trying to filter products. And like, let's say I'm on like the Home Depot website and I want to filter for 3 different categories and 2 different colors. Every single time I check a box, it's like rerunning that. So it throws up a whole spinner, and then it brings it back, and maybe it's going to change what's available in the sidebar. That's so obnoxious to me, and I much rather be able to just check the 3 things I want and then either have some sort of delay. Oh, he hasn't interacted with the filters in 2 seconds, then run it, or just give me a button to actually click search, or do it on, I don't know. There's a couple different ways to approach it, but that super obnoxious throw up a spinner every single time you change something makes it a slog to have to try to input multiple pieces of information.
Yeah, totally.
What did I put here? Pixelated spinners.
Yeah,
I don't know, for some reason.
What is
this? We're talking about how to make your website feel faster. Just something about if your spinner is either obnoxious or is pixelated, just makes me mad, and it makes me feel like the website is slow.
Here's something that can feel slow or fast depending on, I feel like this thing can be really helpful, but at the same time frustrating. Skeleton screens, which are basically a skeleton version of your app, usually
gray
missing
boxes.
images, missing the actual text. Yeah, using gray boxes that sometimes have a loading indicator. There's nothing more frustrating when it's a skeleton screen for 10 seconds or something like that, and you're just oh, it's so close. But in reality, sometimes that's really frustrating because it's just wait, this isn't actually loading. It should have some sort of cancelable, oh, this is taking too long. It's clearly hit a snag or something. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Sometimes this is such a vibe thing to me. I think skeleton loaders can be super useful when done correctly, but also oftentimes not done correctly. Yeah,
when you're in a shoddy network environment and you see a skeleton loader, I often think, am I offline? Do I not have a good connection? And we have APIs, or we have network connection APIs for that. And if that's the case, you should be throwing up you're offline right now, instead of me having to think that your skeleton loader is just telling me that I'm offline. It should be telling me I'm just fetching the data right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's better than the opposite, which is literally nothing. I'm using FedEx's mobile website right now.
Oh, dude.
And let me show you. Let me show you.
I know this. I know this experience. I've used this. And I know what you're about to say.
All
it
right,
is
ready?
So awful.
Okay, am I showing anything sensitive? I don't believe so. All right, watch FedEx's website when I open it up. Look at the footer.
Your footer.
The footer. Oh, yes, there it is. There it is.
Dude, I knew exactly what you were going to say. I've had this experience so many times in the past, whoever knows that. And I go to it, I'm like, oh, it's the footer. Is this broken? Is this a wrong link? Is this oh no, it's just loading. Okay.
At least put the text loading. At least put the very least you could do is put the word loading, and nothing. The worst case is they say about our company is the first thing that you see when you click on a tracking link for FedEx.
It's
unbelievable.
The footer. Yeah. Okay. You're FedEx. You have such a good brand opportunity here. We're delivering your information. Hold 1 second,
Yes.
Here's a tracking
little
code for your tracking
on a back of a thing, a little database that's being held by a guy. Yeah, there's so much.
Yeah, a guy's walking with a computer into the you got options, guys. FedEx, you got options. You're known for being the company that put the arrow in the logo. We're attention to detail oriented. We put a logo. Yeah. We put an arrow in our logo.
Don't coast on that arrow in your logo. Keep it going.
Yeah. Just anything. Crazy.
That's hilarious that you knew exactly what it was. There's probably a million people listening to this right now being like, I know.
Totally. Yeah, it's very frustrating. Yeah. Oh, another thing that Gatsby kind of popularized that I think is occasionally good is if you have large photos or using photos in your interface. Sometimes those things can take a little while. A blurred, low-res version of that photo loading first in the exact same spot, to me, looks better than a blank space where that photo is going to be. I mean, you could even have a blank space with a color, but a blank white space. Okay, so let's go good, better, best. I think best is the thing loading fast. Good is the blurred thing or background color that then fades the image in. And then bad is nothing, and then your page loads, and then all the content shifts down. Throw that in the trash, because that's garbage. But yeah, do something there for images. Just images popping in left and right. User goes to click on something, the whole thing moves. That's trash talk.
Yeah, and especially if you are using a framework that makes you, or you should be embedding the width and height, or at least the aspect ratio of your images, so that when they do load, you don't get content shift. You have to run a process that figures out how big your images are in order to know how big they are.
Well, use a aspect ratio. Problem solved.
Yeah, I know, but the thing is that like you have to process all of your images ahead of time in order to understand how the width and height of them are, right? Or the aspect ratio. They're the same thing, right? The browser UI will take the width and height and make it aspect ratio. But what I'm saying is that you're already doing that to get the width and height of your image when you upload it, or you're storing in a database, or when you're doing a build, you're figuring all of that out. You can very easily extend that process to generate a base 64 blurred version.
Yes.
Or find the dominant color. There's several of these like blur up techniques that you can do. And I agree as well, because otherwise it's just like, what is in this random space?
Yeah, totally.
Search on input instead of search on click. This is, if you ever wonder how search is so fast on some of these websites, it's often because what they're doing is they're firing off the fetch request on like a key down. That's another one. Instead of waiting for key up, do it on key down. And what they're doing is if you keep typing, then they'll just cancel or abort those requests in the background because you're starting a new one. And for a lot of people, it's worth those extra requests versus having to like wait for a user to actually go ahead and hit the search button. Or you can even just like wait for 200 milliseconds after somebody has finished typing, then go ahead and fire it off so they don't have to go grab their mouse and mouse over and click the search button.
Word.
Another one, progress loaders that move in between steps. So often a progress loader is not going to give you a very clear 0 to 100% of how something is doing. It's because there are steps. Like let's say you want to like resize an image, right? You got to upload it. You have to wait for the job to start. You got to actually resize the image, and then you got to send it back. And those 5 or 6 steps might be your progress, but if one of them takes a long time, it's often good to show the animation moving in between those steps so the user actually knows that something is actually happening.
Yeah, word.
Lastly, I asked on Twitter for some people's tips as well. I thought we'll just go through them and see what our thoughts are. The first one is Jimmy VV says, make the UI bigger so more stuff is below the fold, and then stream and suspend that in. I thought that was kind of funny because with streaming, you can send what you have to the browser as you're still processing it. And this is especially important with this AI stuff that can take 7-8 seconds to generate. So what he's saying is make the UI really big so that as the stuff is streaming in, it's not actually on their screen. And you could just show the first one on there, which I thought was a kind of a fun way to go about it. Because that whole, like, even just text streaming in and like updating the UI, that's a very hard problem to solve. I don't know that anyone has completely nailed it just yet, because it is very disorienting when too much is coming in at once.
It's like, that's like a Nathan for you thing. It's like, he's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make all your things bigger. So that way. Yeah.
Well, I think it was at Toronto Airport many years ago. They were getting such bad reviews because it took forever for their luggage to come in. This is one of those like business textbooks things. I'm pretty sure I learned this in business school. So what they did is they didn't make their baggage any faster. They simply just made the walk to the baggage longer. And then people stopped complaining about it, because like if you have something to do while you are waiting, it doesn't feel like it is taking as long. And that's the reason why they put mini games in some of these in some video games. That's why if something takes a long time, you could have like a little game for your user to have. Just the perceived speed of something is so important.
Can I tell you an embarrassing story? We went to Mexico for spring break, and when we came back, we were standing at the baggage carousel at the Denver airport, which does take a while. And all of our bags, except for Courtney's bag, had come out, and we all had them. We were standing around, and the guy comes over to us, and he's like, "Oh, are you missing a bag? Whatever." And we're like, "Yeah, her bag hasn't come out yet, so we're just waiting, see if there's anything else coming out." Everybody's long gone, and there's one bag going around on the carousel, and he's like, "That's not it?" We're like, "No, we've already looked at this bag 3 or 4 times. It's not it." And the bag just keeps going around. He's like, "All right, let me go check." He goes off to his computer, and as he's checking, I'm like, "Let me just go look at this bag one more time." It was her bag the whole time.
No.
And the poor guy, I had to go up to him and be like, "Hey, man, I'm so sorry. It was actually that bag." I was like,
oh, man.
I swear I looked at it. It was crazy. I don't know if I was just sleep deprived or what. I felt so embarrassed.
The Peach says how some animations are intentionally slowed down to build trust. So this is not perceived speed, but it's perceived trust that you have to slow things down to make it look like you're actually doing something.
Oh my God.
That's kind of interesting. Maybe like when you're submitting, like when you finally submit something, like, I spent forever saving drafts and now I'm submitting it. Should it take 2 seconds to submit something?
Oh my gosh. These are all unethical life pro tips. That's so far. I don't think I can't imagine ever needing this kind of thing. I'm sure some
checking
people,
for security.
I'm sure there's data to back up that like this is actually a thing or that this is actually a good thing for some people.
Trust is a big thing. You know, like if you want to or you're checking your credit or something like that. I don't know. I could see it, right? Where it's like, oh, that was too fast. I don't know if it actually did anything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
AKA Govin says, show the result before the spinner? What the hell does that even mean? One small change that makes a huge shift. Show the result before the spinner? Why? You show spinner after? Fake it until it's done loading. I don't know what that one means. I thought I'd throw that in there, see if you have any thoughts.
I don't. No, I have no idea. Again, some of these are just like Nathan for you things. These are hilarious.
Alex Vipin says, don't add enter animation to popovers, only exit animations.
Yes.
See the Mac OS menu bar and Tailwind Catalyst drop downs.
We were just saying that.
Yeah.
Pop it in real quick.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
The menu bar immediately shows.
Same with the Finder or app opening stuff. The only reason it doesn't do that is if you're opening something that's been minimizing. You're unminimizing something.
But what's the idea of only doing? I get it, not on the way in because you want it, but on the way out, I guess it gives you context for something is going away.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you want to get it as fast as possible. You want that feedback. You don't want it to delay. Yeah.
The context for it coming in is it's literally in front of you. But
right.
The context for it going away is it fades out so you understand it's going somewhere.
Yeah.
Interesting.
ACAV Beats says that skeletons feel slow now. I'd rather just wait to see any content at all, but I am weird. And then I am Corgi says, maybe a hot take, but shimmers suck 99% of the time. I'd sooner take a spinner in most cases. When he's saying shimmers, he means like shimmering skeleton screens. Look at all this content we haven't loaded yet. Look at how it might look. Oh, that's, I'm with you. I'm with you guys both on this one. I think this is so true. And especially when it's like, here are 5 items being loaded in skeleton screens. And then once you actually load the item, it's like one thing pops in. It's like, come on. You just show me one, I guess, if you're going to do it at all.
Yeah,
if there's
a
possibility of it loading less. Because then I'm like, where'd all that stuff go? You were going to show me.
That's a really good point. You think like, or if there's no results or one result. Yeah. Interesting. Maybe this is the beginning of the backlash. Give me a cute loading indicator, give me the FedEx truck backing up and unloading my results. Or just make I think probably both of those are rooted in the websites are actually slow. FedEx should not take 4 seconds to show me my tracking. It feels like it should be faster than that.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Those are our tips. Let us know your tips down below in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And anything else to add there, Scott?
I got nothing. Work on your app speed. All that stuff. It's important. Don't let your slow apps be out there. That's all I got.
Peace.